Erling Haaland. He signed for a mere £51 million back in 2022. Since then, well, try over 150 goals, 3 Premier League titles, and a Champions League trophy. But buried deep in his contract is a massive release clause, reportedly sitting right around £160 million. Real Madrid wants him, Barcelona has a plan, and PSG? Well, they've definitely got the money. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to completely break down the financial mechanics behind what could literally be the most significant potential transfer in Premier League history. So let's start by looking back at that £51 million figure. Back in the summer of 2022, that was the initial fee Manchester City handed over to Borussia Dortmund to bring a 21-year-old Haaland to the Etihad. Now, you got to remember the context here. City had been famously and successfully playing without a traditional striker for a while. So yeah, it was an absolute bargain. But there was still some genuine, widespread skepticism out there. People were really wondering, how is he a traditional number 9 going to fit into Pep Guardiola's super complex, possession-heavy system? Well, spoiler alert, he fit in just fine. But right now, the whole internet is just absolutely buzzing over a completely different number, £160 million. This is that massive rumored release clause supposedly tucked away deep in his contract, just waiting to be triggered by one of Europe's absolute elite clubs. And this number just looms over European football, right? Because it represents a predetermined escape route. It literally takes the power completely out of Manchester City's hands, assuming, of course, a club can actually afford to pay it. And the frenzy around this number? It reached an absolute boiling point a while back when Real Madrid presidential candidate Enrique Riquelme went on Spanish television, whipped out a Madrid shirt with Haaland's name printed on the back, and promised to trigger that exact £160 million clause if he got elected. He literally swore he would personally refund the membership fees of over 100,000 Real Madrid members if he failed to bring him in. Now sure, Haaland's agent quickly shut that down, calling it entertaining but not true, and Riquelme ended up losing the election anyway. But that £160 million number? Yeah, that absolutely hasn't gone away. All right, so let's dive into the core of this whole situation, because right around minute 7 of this explainer, I'm going to reveal why losing Haaland could actually be a brilliant financial masterstroke for Manchester City. We're talking a totally counterintuitive argument here. We need to look past the emotion of losing a generational talent and stare straight at the cold, hard balance sheet. So here is our roadmap for today. 1. Unprecedented ROI. 2. Clause mechanics. 3. Suitors' finances. And 4. The masterstroke. Okay, kicking things off with Section 1, Haaland's unprecedented City ROI. We really need to correct a bit of the mainstream narrative here, because Haaland hasn't just been good for City, he has been historic. We're talking 3 Premier League titles alongside a historic treble, the Club World Cup, an FA Cup, and a Carabao Cup. Oh, and by his second season, he officially blasted past a staggering 150 goals for the club across all competitions. He even became the fastest player to hit 50 Premier League goals in history, completely obliterating the previous record. When you actually sit down and do the math on this, it's mind-blowing. If you divide his initial £51 million fee by that immense output of over 150 goals, his cost per goal is roughly £340,000. Think about that for a second. In an era where clubs are routinely dropping £100 million on wingers who maybe score 10 goals a season, this is an almost laughably brilliant return on investment. His true open market valuation today sits well north of £150 million. So from a purely economic standpoint, Manchester City have already won this deal several times over. Moving right along to Section 2, Release Clause Mechanics Explained. See, a release clause isn't just a polite suggestion for a negotiation. It is a hard legal switch. If a buying club deposits the exact predetermined amount and the player accepts the move, the selling club is completely bypassed. They have absolutely zero say in the matter. There's no, well, we refuse to sell to a rival. But, and this is a really massive but, these clauses are highly conditional. They can be restricted to certain dates, specific leagues, and they very often decay in value over time. With recent changes in FIFA regulations, elite agents are drafting these deals with incredibly strict legal escape routes in mind. So, let's look at the timeline here for a quick reality check. Towards the end of 2024, Haaland signed a jaw-dropping new deal extending his stay in Manchester for a full decade, technically running until the summer of 2034. Transfer experts in Spain confirmed this new contract does indeed have a guaranteed release clause that activates around 2029. However, this is exactly where those intense rumors of a potential summer 2026 transfer stem from. Because while the absolute guaranteed clause hits in 2029, modern mega deals like this almost always include mutual break clauses or renegotiation points way earlier. That 2026 window is heavily speculated to be one of those strategic inflection points where a move could, theoretically, be forced. Which brings us to Section 3, the suitor's financial realities. Time for a quick pattern interrupt here, because even if that door opened tomorrow, the clubs most frequently linked to him face vastly different economic realities. Let's break down the only 3 clubs realistically in this conversation right now. Real Madrid, they have immense political desire to sign him, but they are severely bottlenecked by La Liga's incredibly rigid salary caps. In Spain, you are capped before you can even register a player. Madrid just absorbed Kylian Mbappe's absolute colossus of a contract, so to fit Haaland's wages alongside Mbappe, Vinicius, and Bellingham, Madrid would basically have to gut their entire squad's depth, which is nearly impossible post-Mbappe. Okay, what about Barcelona? Well, they've spent years pulling future economic levers, literally selling off future TV rights just to survive. They have essentially zero registration room left. Would they really risk total financial peril to pull those levers again? It's incredibly unlikely. And then there's PSG. They actually have the money and the room, but dropping $160 million on a superstar directly clashes with their brand new sporting philosophy of building a young, collective team without the massive egos. Plus, the biggest question of them all, does Erling Haaland actually want to spend his prime years playing in Paris? So the actual market for him is surprisingly narrow. All right, Section 4, the masterstroke of selling. Here's the big reveal we talked about earlier. To really grasp the case for why Manchester City might actually want to sell the best striker in the world, we have to understand amortization. This is that invisible accounting magic clubs use to navigate financial fair play and profitability and sustainability rules, or PSR. Basically, when a club buys a player, the transfer fee doesn't hit the books all at once. Instead, it gets divided evenly across the entire length of the player's contract. But when a club sells a player, the total profit is calculated immediately against whatever value is left on the books. Let's look at how this actually plays out in practice. Because City stretched his new contract over 10 years out to 2034, and because several years of his initial fee have already been totally written off, his remaining book value shrinks dramatically. This means if City were to actually sell him for that £160 million figure, the vast majority of that money isn't just cash. It generates an absolutely massive, immediate influx of pure accounting profit. For a club that constantly has to manage PSR compliance, selling high while a player's value peaks is literally the ultimate golden ticket. And it gets better for City. Let's look at the wages and the replacement market. Haaland is reportedly earning a staggering £500,000 a week. Selling him completely wipes that colossal salary right off the books. So when you combine $160 million in pure profit with the relief of £500,000 a week in wages, Manchester City would suddenly have immense financial flexibility to completely rebuild their squad. We're talking about having the freedom to enter the market and realistically buy 2 world-class replacements. City could easily trigger moves for generational talents like Jamal Musiala or Florian Wirtz at around $100 million apiece, or secure a rising dominant striker like Victor Gyökeres, all without ever sweating over those strict PSR regulations. So what does this all mean? We know the accounting logic of a sale is incredibly tempting for any modern football club trying to navigate strict financial rules. We know the 2026 rumors are swirling and that 2029 guaranteed clause is looming on the horizon. But we also know about the massive financial hurdles currently facing Real Madrid, Barcelona, and PSG. So taking all this brutal math and the reality of these causes into account, what do you think? Does Erling Haaland stay or go? And if he goes, where exactly does he end up?